Okay, we're live. Some royalty-free music on repeat. This all looks whack. One of my other videos, I had like a cool song. So this is the part two. In front of me, you can see the part one, where I did variables, which is a single module from Codecademy's like Learn How to Code course. Where's the Codecademy Learn How to Code course? Codecademy. Search. And I'm not doing pro. I thought of another reason, which is that you might consider their stuff if you pay for the pro account and then you sign in, you're doing that course. That might be considered like in a way like intellectual property. So that's another good reason that I'm just doing the walkthrough of the free one. Learn how to code. Here's the course. Learn how to code. Let's resume. I'm 7% done. I went back and looked. I said it took me about 15 minutes. It was really closer to 10. So 10 by 10, or 10 by 12. It says 6 hours here, but I think it's more like a 3-hour type of thing. But anyway, today we're going to try and get through the rest of it. And so let's resume. That was great. I know it was. At that time. I thought I didn't have access to quizzes because I'm on a pro account, but when I click resume, it pops me into a quiz. So let me go back to this actual lesson variables. I'm not tripping. Next, see, it says variables quiz pro. That's kind of confusing, right? I think it doesn't need to say pro. Why does it say pro? Variable quiz pro. Apparently you have access to the quiz anyway, but all right, let's just do it. I don't know. Maybe it won't grade it, or maybe it just won't show up like you passed on your profile or something. Take a look at the following code snippet. If we print out the value of num sides, what would it be? 5. And okay, empty, then 4. And triangle. So the answer is 3, but like I don't really recall them teaching about like this stuff. But cool. And that's like assuming like a by value transfer instead of a. Ooh, no, not really, not necessarily by ref order. Value of my cookbook. What do you think the statement will be? My favorite cookbook is. This is like so JavaScript, right? My cookbook statement. My favorite cookbook is the so JavaScript. I'm a huge fan of JavaScript. I think we should start with web technologies. I'm glad that's what they're doing first, but I wish they would tell you instead of just like, we are doing a general introduction to programming. Shh, it's JavaScript. Taking inventory at a clothing store. You have 6 shirts. Value of the save the value of the number of shirts to the variable shirts. Oh, I can do it. Yeah, definitely. Sweet. When we use a value without assigning it to a variable, that's known as hard coding. I got news for you. Even if you use a variable, you still call it hard coding in many cases. So as a developer, if I have data which could be stored in a database and it could be accessed through an API, but instead I choose to write the value on the front end without making a request to the back end, that's also called hard coding because it's inflexible, right? That's the idea of hard coding. But they're super right that if you directly use a value without a variable, that's even less flexible. So it is hard coding. But just because you use a variable doesn't mean you're not hard coding. It's the only thing I want to call out. The idea of hard coding is that you're being less flexible than could be. But it doesn't mean less flexible than optimal. There's cases where being less flexible is good. And basically the reason you wouldn't want to be flexible is if it's going to take a bunch of work and like a long time to implement a really flexible system, and you're trying to like product quickly, then you can go for the flexible. Very well. Wow, that was great. Find that music. Oh. No. So the first part, 5. Doing the data analysis. We're not doing data analysis today. Yeah, you hear that? Okay. That might be annoying, but I just feel like listening to some music. Usually I don't listen to royalty-free music. Listen on repeat is a thing that lets you listen to YouTube videos on repeat. I have a way to like volume up. La, 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 la. Yeah, can y'all see my Spotify? I would play it, but they would like censor my video and stuff, right? But like, have premium Spotify if you're a programmer is worth it. My playlists. There's a chill one. Yeah, probably chill or EDM. Trying to code something without lyrics or like low-key lyrics. You can still hear me, right? That's enough of that. Our next quiz. Wait, I already did that, right? You have too many tabs open. If you have too many tabs open because you're a real programmer, you can get something called the Great Suspender. See, I'm hovering over it. It's a Chrome plugin. You should be using Chrome. I was programming with this person yesterday. It's using Safari. Like, why are you using Safari? Use Chrome. Wow. I just keep clicking next, or is there stuff to do? They're not validating anything. Okay, I guess this module is just like reading. Numbers, 2, 3, 4, those are numbers. Strings, hello. It's a string, like words. So yeah, if I was like legit new to programming, this would probably be useful. But I can just kind of fly through it. I guess I would probably recommend this for everyone, even the vets, because that way you just get a baseline of shared understanding, like data types and stuff. Even if you're a vet, you can just fly through it. Oh, okay, a project now. We're not doing the we're not doing pro, but it's cool to know. I know they did projects. I didn't realize they would be in projects so early. You can do projects on your own. What I recommend you do: get the free account, get a GitHub. It's where real developers put their open source code, and you can have your project there. Data types are important because they identify different information used in programs. That's kind of true. They are a recent development in programming. Fake news. They increase the number of lines in a program. That's not even a good thing. So let's go with the first one. And specifically, what is the information they identify? They identify the functions that are available to use on that reference. So like 3 is a number, and there are just certain things you can do with numbers. Things you do, we call those functions. There are things you can do with numbers. You can add numbers, like 2 plus 2 is 4. You can't really add strings, at least not in a mathematical way, but you can add strings in a grammatical way, which is to say that you append them or prepend them. So those functions, they're identifying the functions, the interactions of those references of a particular data type. By information programs. And what information? It's not like generic information. It's specifically what functions are available and what are they going to do with the information that you give it. Data type is used in this code block. Boolean. Depending on your language, that could be a string. I hate to tell you. VBA? Okay, let's not go there. Bash? Whatever. Strings are called strings because musical intervals, negative. Connect 2 pieces of code, negative. Sequence of symbols. Yeah! Symbol has a specific meaning in JavaScript though. Let's not get into that. Parameters of our program. I think I like the sequence of symbols. It's just a hard thing to talk about. See, in JavaScript, there's actually a data type called symbol. See, this is completely a different data type. And if you like have a sequence of these symbols, that doesn't make it a string. But in the plain English meaning of the word symbol here, that's correct. Maybe a sequence of characters. I might like that more. It gets the idea across. True or false? Is this value a string? You could say this value is a string. True or false? I'm being pedantic, I know. And it is, because of the quotation marks. This is actually a really great course. They're doing a great job here. I'm nitpicking on them. Primitive data types include number, boolean, variable. Variable is not a data type. String, dictionary, integers. Actually, that's true, but I'm not going to click it because that's not true in JavaScript. Variables, array, lists. Variables is not a data type. Strings, numbers, booleans. That's also true. I think I'm going to have to go with the dictionary ones. Strings, numbers, booleans. Dictionaries are a data type in some language, but they aren't usually considered a primitive. Okay, that's fake news. Hold on. So this is what it is, but how do you know if it's considered primitive? Primitive, because the word primitive doesn't show up on the website. Dictionary object is the equivalent of a Perl associative array. Many programming languages include associative arrays as primitive data types. Okay. So if a dictionary is an associative array and an associative array is a primitive, then a dictionary should also be a primitive. Well, let's just say, is dictionary a primitive? I don't know why I didn't get results for that. Dictionary a primitive. I think it's just because dictionary is such a common word. Okay. Primitive. Okay. In Python, dictionary. Yeah, let's look at this. It's also in Python, right? A dictionary is an unordered, changeable and indexed collection of elements. Yep. That's how it's implemented in Python. That makes sense. I see how you could argue it's not a primitive. It's like composed of lower levels. Anyway, I'm thinking of Visual Basic, but I'm not seeing the results for it. Dictionary of primitive C#. How about that? It can be primitive data types or non-primitive data types. Okay, that grammar is questionable, but I think this is more correct. So C# and Visual Basic are like pretty similar, and they're very different from Python. Yeah. That would be a primitive dictionary. Let me look at the Python thing. I think I'm not as cool at Python as I thought. Can you simply declare a dictionary, or do you need to construct it as a function of other things? I don't know. This looks like a simple native declaration. So native data types and primitives are usually considered the same. As far as I'm aware, the reason that it wouldn't be a primitive is because it's referenceable from some more basic data type. So it would be a function of that data type. Which when they phrase it as a collection of elements, and if you can say, well, a collection is its own data type, and those elements are their own data type, so really this is just an intersection of those data types, I think you can argue that this is not a primitive in Python. But it seems to be just like straight up declared like that. All right, I'm calling it a primitive. Sorry, guys. Sorry, Codecademy. Yep. Should have clicked that one. Primitive wrapper object. Yeah, we often talk about like integers and floats, where a float has like a decimal or a fraction. But I guess they're all just numbers in JavaScript. Cool. Unlike other programming languages, JavaScript does not define different types of numbers. There you go. That actually, so if we go back, that actually supports this theory that this is really using JavaScript specifically, because dictionary is not really, so dictionary is not a primitive in JavaScript. specifically. And also integers are not in JavaScript specifically. So if we rephrase this question, I think the question kind of works, but I take issue with it because it seems to me there's two correct answers if you look across languages. But if you look specifically in JavaScript, primitive data types in JavaScript include. Now it's definitely this guy. Yeah, because integer is not a thing in JavaScript. Right. And we don't even talk about dictionaries in JavaScript. We just have objects. So Python dictionary. I'll go look up that exact code that we were just talking about. I know this is like a distraction, but see this, even the syntax. Now let's look at a JavaScript object. Great, it's W3 Schools, good reference website. We're using the same reference website in both cases, so you can see this. It looks almost the same, they just added line breaks for some reason, but see that? And then if in this one, if you remove the line breaks, still works because line breaks don't matter in Python. So literally the only difference is in JavaScript you would do that. You'd use the declaration var, or you could say const, or you could say let. Different different ways to declare a variable in JavaScript. In Python you just do that. In Python you call it a dictionary, in JavaScript you call it an object. You do the same thing, but but that clarifies it. If you make this into a question about JavaScript, dictionaries are definitely out. Because primitive or non-primitive, they're just not a type at all in JavaScript. If you use the word dictionary in JavaScript, it's because you're thinking about another language, and in JavaScript you would say an object. Why did I click the wrong thing again? So now apparently I think variables are a primitive. I don't. Hold on, let's go back because I want to get all the ones right. This is good. Causing me to brush up. Strings are called strings because they're a sequence of symbols, sure. Data types identify information used in programs. True or false, is this a string? It is a string. That's a Boolean. Primitive data types in JavaScript, numbers, Booleans, not variables. Strings, numbers, Booleans. Cool. Operators. This Career Karma, I was kind of looking around at boot camps. Actually, Career Karma is not a boot camp. They, and this other site over here is for interview prep. I don't know which one's the best. I was just kind of Googling around, or Quora. I went on Quora. There's a cool guy who created Algo Expert. Algo Expert. Yeah, this guy. Clement. I don't know how to say his last name. Clement. He's a cool guy. You can watch his YouTube channel. I watch his YouTube channel. He made Algo Expert. There's another guy called Tech Lead. I don't know basically anything about this guy. I think a lot of people hate him. But he's another guy with a YouTube channel. He also creates an algorithm training website, which is part of the interviewing process at some companies. And so And also there was a whole drama where Tech Lead and Clement got in like a legal issue because, anyway, I don't want to misquote the argument, but I think they got in a legal issue. I'll just say it like that. And it's settled now. So, but it dawned on me, I was like, I just like the one because I like Clement more, but I never actually asked which is better. That led me to the Googling. And then, of course, Cora was like, hey, you know, those are fine, but also here's some things you didn't even think about. Interviewing.io is apparently really cool. So I bring this all up. Is it a rabbit trail? Yes. But I bring it up because Codecademy by itself is a great way to start. It's not a way to get awesome, though. You could get a job off of Codecademy. But there are other things you can do to supplement that if you're having a hard time. Me, personally, I think I just got the job off of Codecademy and off of starting a GitHub and coding. And I, like back in the day, I had interviews and I screwed a bunch of them up. And then I got a job. My first full-time programming job was at SAIC. And they were contract of the Patent and Trade Office. And it was a great gig. I learned a whole lot of stuff. I think I had to go through 6 or 8 interviews. I don't know if they were all in person. At least a few in-person interviews, and like 6 to 8 phone screenings, I think, before I landed that first job. And I think it was like 2 months, something like that. I think it took me more than a month, and I was feeling kind of discouraged. But then the next month I got it, if I'm not mistaken. Looking back, I was pretty much just doing Codecademy and my own GitHub. And my own GitHub helped me greatly. There are other people that just did Codecademy and they didn't do their own GitHub. And I don't know if they even made it. So I think a GitHub is essential. This goes back to my coding curriculum. Let's see. Anyone who learns with me, I don't only have them do a Codecademy, I also have them do GitHub, and I also have them do a Stack Overflow. Yeah. So these are like the 3 essentials, and Stack Overflow is great too. First of all, you should be getting an account anyway because a bunch of the answers are going to be there, and you're going to want to give people credit and give them upvotes. And then it also proves that you know what's going on when you can provide an answer, or, and here's a key that you don't see in a lot of other sites, you can ask a good question. If you can ask a good question, that's a real sign that you're ready to start coding. Asking a good question is going to allow you to be able to search Google and find the answers that you need. And you can also teach others by asking good questions. And it is a good way to contribute to the community. Ben Awad, here's another guy that I think highly of on YouTube. And he recently gave a video where he's teaching people, teaching an e-girl how to code. So watch that video. I recommend it. And she'll have questions naturally. And he's actually teaching her to think like a programmer, which is something that if you just go Codecademy, it's kind of missed. So Codecademy will give you the technical skills. But I would argue, first of all, it doesn't give you a social network, right? And I think that's a pretty well acknowledged problem. It kind of misses on the interview prep specifically. And this is a sad fact of the programming industry. It's that you can be a great coder and you can be a terrible interviewee because of the way the interviews are structured. So the interviews will focus on something called algorithms, which is a very special kind of programming problem that you really don't run into in your day-to-day programming. I don't want to get off into theory about why they do that, but they do that. So you can use something like interviewing.io, Algo Expert, these others will teach you about algorithms. I think interviewing.io will also teach you about the soft skills of interviewing, which is another thing you're going to miss in Codecademy. I have some people that I teach to code. Some of them are wicked smart, pick up the coding great, but they might not be first English might be their second language, and that can really mess you up in an interview, because if the interviewer thinks that they're asking a simple question and you literally don't understand the word, even if you know the solution, if they reworded it, it's going to make you look bad. Unless you have an awesome interviewer who recognizes, like, this is a great person and they just don't understand English very well. But a lot of interviewers are frankly not that good. Interviewers are not awesome. There's a lot of really low quality interviewers out there. And a lot of them are not charitable. So communication skills, soft skills is really going to help you in the interview. And algorithm training, as well as your portfolio, as well as Codecademy. Now you're ready to, at that point, I think you're looking at a mid-level job. I think that's probably the difference between a junior and a mid. In addition to the fact that a mid should not just know the language, but should also know at least one framework, and potentially like have some familiarity with the full stack, which is to say the front end and the back end. You don't need to be an expert on both. If you're an expert on both, you're not a mid, you're a senior. But you should have some familiarity with both and be highly competent. Maybe not expert, but be highly competent in at least one. Wait, that was a rabbit trail, but I think it was a good one. Let's use operators. Oh gosh, I lost a bunch of time. I'm trying to prove that this whole thing takes like 3 hours, but I just wasted a bunch of time. Let's calculate how many apples. I did the right thing there, but some of these are not validated. See how a learner would be left unsure if they did the right thing. For once, let's compare apples and oranges. This is bad. Oh, not 0 apples. No, that's good. It would be nice if there was some more validation, but like, yeah. But I guess my advice to the learner here would be, okay, so here's a quiz. This is some form of validation, which is really helpful. Yeah, so my advice to the learner would be, don't stress out too much about the little lesson modules. If you did something and you're not sure if it's right and Codecademy allows you to proceed, just go with it. And we'll validate whether you got it right, first of all, in this quiz, and then more importantly, in your GitHub portfolio. And so I guess I hate to say this because it's really pretty essential, but like kind of take the whole Codecademy learning experience with a grain of salt, unfortunately. I still think it's worth it. But yeah, you're going to probably get to your portfolio time and realize that you had some things wrong. That's okay. Okay. That's kind of how the way it's has to be that way. Unless they revamp Codecademy. Logical operators and comparison operators evaluate to which data type? Booleans. Because you're going to say, for example, is 2 greater than 1? That's yes or no, which is like true or false. Is 5 equal to 5? These are all like Boolean questions. They're yes or no questions. The answer is 5 equal to 5 is not 3. If it was like, is 5 equal to 5? 3 would be the answer. That would be a number. That would be more like 5 minus 2. Yeah. So 5 minus 2 is 3. Minus is not a logical operator. You might think, oh, minus is a logical operator, right? Because math is logical. No, it's not. Logical operators are basically like these guys. They're not mathematical operators. They're logical operators. That's why we use the term logical to distinguish the mathematical operators. And comparison operators. Yeah. There are complicated branches of math where comparison operators have a mathematical result. So in calculus, you can talk about the area under a curve. So like this image right here. Like that green area, you could use a comparison operator to describe that area. And that's not what we mean in programming. Yeah, comparison operators is 5 greater than 3, not everything less than 3 could have a numeric result. We don't really have a data type for that. There is a shape, a data type. That's interesting stuff. We have shapes in websites, right? You can see, like, look at these shapes. Everything's a shape. I'll show you. See that blue area? This is getting into HTML, which we're not really studying, but you will study if you follow the web development path. That's a shape there, and it has width and height. So yeah, I think that's just a thing that people don't really do today. I think you could have a data type. You could have a data type, which is for an area under a curve. But that doesn't exist today. Okay, the answer is Boolean anyway. What is an operator? Symbol, yeah, this is correct. A symbol that performs calculations. Notice that it's not a string. So, and it doesn't matter if you have like a bunch of operators together, like plus, minus, minus, multiply, mod. That's a collection of symbols. Is it a string? No. It's not. It's just a collection of symbols. And previously, if you remember from their other thing, they were saying that a string is a collection of symbols. as like, maybe like in the ordinary sense of the word symbol, yeah, but I prefer if they changed it to maybe like character. Anyway. Arithmetic operators are used to make mathematical calculations. Yeah. Other operators also make mathematical calculations, but this is a very true answer to the question. You have 5 forks and 3 spoons. And right? 5 forks and 3 spoons. Have 8 plants. Plants equals 8. This statement evaluates to true or false. Plants is 4. And the answer is false. But in this is cool. In JavaScript, we have the concept of Truthy. Depends whether you use 2 or 3 equal signs. You should pretty much always use 3 equal signs. So the fact that they're asking with 2, you can do that in JavaScript. Technically you can, but like if you were submitting that code to me and I'm like the developer you're working with, and I would do a peer review and I'd be like, why are you using 2 equal signs? We prefer to have 3 equal signs, which is an exact comparison. Exact comparisons are preferred because they are exact. Result is never ambiguous. If you do 2 equal signs, that's an equal-ish comparison. And frankly, even the term equal-ish comparison is not a standard term. Talking about this whole double equals term, it's really confusing. Even talking about it is confusing. So we tend to avoid it. So, like, yeah. These are all truthy. You'll learn more about that in the other path. Beware the double equals. But the answer in this case would be false. Functions, awesome. Some styles of programming rely completely on functions. Yep. Yeah, I can just click next, right? But I didn't do what it told me to do. It's not really validating. Build hamburgers without a function. Add bread. I wonder if you do the pro, if it actually validates that you did this right. Bread, burger patty, pickles, bread. Don't really get the point of that. Okay, when you click these things, it's a function. Whatever. Cool. Instead of giving those instructions for every hamburger, we can group. Add bread, add burger patty. Yep, make hamburger. Okay. Woo! Love it. Not everyone wants to eat hamburgers. Okay, yeah. Look, every time I try and complain about Codecademy, they come back right back and redeem themselves. This is a totally great point that they're making. What if so I have a function, make a hamburger. What if all the hamburgers at my restaurant change so that they all include bacon and cheese now? I can just change the function. Yeah. Boop. Yeah. I just changed the function. And I don't have to go back and add bread, add burger, add cheese individually. can just change all the burgers. Probably be more impressive if there was like a bunch of burgers on the screen and it's all switched to be the new recipe immediately. Make sandwich, make fries, make ice cream. I love it. And then you could have one button up here that's like make meal. And then you could make a bunch of meals. And then you could just change the dessert without having to change all sandwiches and fries. And you can see how this starts to build an application, because all of these things that we are making, they're components of an application. Look, you're getting a picture here. This isn't straightforward to explain the why, but just to explain the intuition. This block of text right here, pretend it's a burger, right? So sandwich, make sandwich, make sandwich, make sandwich. And it's more like make search result, make search result, make search result. All of these can be expressed as functions. That's mind-blowing if you think about it. All of these search results can be expressed as functions. And that would be React. Okay, let's get back to it. Putting it all together. All right, yep. I put it together, Doc. Now give me a quiz. Start the quiz. What is a function? I actually don't know. When a function is called, it picks up the phone. I really appreciate whoever made this question. Okay, hold on, I need some more coffee. Hold on. You see how my coffee cup says coffee? That's a good variable name. It is. When you name it what it is, great variable name, and people understand. I hope somebody I work with is going to be like, John, it's not Hungarian. That's a joke for the vets. Hungarian is a variable naming notation that I use, and it's pretty weird. So, coffee would not be Hungarian. When a function is called, all of its steps are executed. Ew, I'm uncomfortable with this. When a function is called. Yeah, I think the only one that is actually true is it is defined. But I could see Codecademy saying all of its steps are executed is the right result, but it's actually not, because short-circuiting operators are a thing. I play Raid, the game on your phone. I guess like things are happening, so my phone keeps buzzing, but I'm worried it's actual text messages. It's defined, yeah, no, okay, so this is actually wrong. If you have a short-circuiting operator, so let me go to W3 schools. JavaScript tutorial. Go try it yourself. So we're gonna make a script real quick. Script. This is like not really needed for like intro level, but my thing is like should be saying the right thing. I think it's alert, right? Might not be alert. All right, let's see. Okay, it is alert. So I got this alert, it says, hey. Now, right, check this out. So this double and sign here is called a short-circuiting operator, okay? If this is an and, we learned about the logical and, so this is a logical and. Just one of those is a logical and, okay? Doing two of those is a short-circuiting and, okay? What does it mean short-circuiting? It's not even gonna execute the code to the right. It's not even gonna execute it if the left is false. Okay. So if it did execute, not true would end up being true. Because that's the last thing, it's true. Unless it just skips the true, then it's going to be null. Now, if I don't want to be too confusing, so I'll rename it some statement. So there's two possibilities. One possibility is that some statement is null. That's still confusing. Y'all don't know about null. How about false? Okay. One possibility is that some statement is false. It's only false if it did not execute the right hand. The other possibility is that some statement is true. It will be true if it did execute the right hand. So it proceeded through the short-circuiting operator and assigned to true. Okay. If it's true, I get alert face. If it's false, I don't get alert face. Okay, and it'll go straight to hey. All right, let's do it. Hey. So what did I just prove? What I proved, true did not execute. Let's go back to the Codecademy question. All of its steps are executed. So here's a function, do alert. All of the steps were not executed. So first of all, this was not executed. Okay. And then secondly, true was not executed. Now someone who's very pedantic and also wrong, so this creates a logical branch. Okay, so by virtue of being a logical branch, it's a distinct step. However, someone would argue, oh, it's a single line, so it's a single step. That's actually not true because you can have multi-line statements. So this is a distinct step and a distinct logical branch. But even if you grant that that's a step that was executed, this one was not executed, right? And that's called control flow. The idea of control flow is that you can have a function where you control what pieces are executed. So no, not all of it's executed. Pieces that you want executed. Why would I only want to do some alerts? Let's say if it is Wednesday. Because I have a thing on a schedule. On Wednesdays, I want a certain email. On Thursdays, I want a different email. So that's why I would want a control flow, right? So my function is like, in this hypothetical, this is pseudocode at this point. So send email reminder, okay? And I want it to send me an email that just gives me like the things that I'm gonna do that day, okay? And so on Wednesday, I have a certain schedule that's different than my schedule on Thursday. Okay, so that's why I would want a single function with control flow so that even though it's the same function, it doesn't actually do the same thing every time. So we have shown that all of the steps are not executed. And in fact, this is an important piece of functions called control flow. However, when a function is called, it is defined. Now, it's true that you can have an undefined function. You just can't call it, okay? And it's also not a function. So I can say, window.fake function. I invoked fake function, but window.fake function is actually not a function. It's undefined. So you might say that the function was called, but actually no, the function wasn't called. The function wasn't called because it's not a function. What you did is you attempted to invoke a non-function that was undefined. It's an undefined property. You attempted to invoke an undefined property and it failed. Now, function, real function, alert, I'm real. Window.real function, I'm real. So here I invoked a function. Here, I did not invoke a function. So what's the difference? It's impossible to invoke a function invoke and call are the same thing. It's impossible to call a function that doesn't exist. You might say, hey, John, I'm calling a function that doesn't exist. No, you're not. You're calling a non-function undefined property. So you're not calling a function at all. Just think you're calling a function. What you're really doing is creating an error. So when a function is called, it is defined, I maintain, is the correct answer. I'm actually going to tweet him this one. Again, I love Codecademy. I learned from them. I recommend them to everybody. And I am being nitpicky, but they're wrong on this. Can I get a hashtag in there? Soft. Dang it. I need the hashtag, right? That's another reason code is wonderful. It's a concise word. Okay. All right, let's keep going. Which of the following statements are true about functions? Functions cannot be defined. Functions are reusable sets of statements grouped to perform a task. That's true. Fill in the blank. When we define a function, its inputs are called arguments. Each time we call the function, that's just one of those things it's just like a programming term, jargon. Whenever the inputs are called arguments. As a learner, I hate this stuff, but that's just one of those things you got to learn for no apparent reason. It's just like, memorize it. We call them arguments. Each time we call the function, we'll give actual values for each input called... Oh gosh, I did that so backwards. Okay, I take back everything I said. Arguments are this specific time. Parameters are in general. So when we define a function, its inputs are called parameters. Each time we call it, the actual values are arguments. All right, hope I didn't confuse it all too much. You can also think about it, if you've taken higher level statistics or math, parameters are very general across the whole population. Any characteristic that can help defining or classifying a particular system. It's not super helpful. I'm thinking of statistics where a parameter is for the whole population, and then you have variables in the sample, and then you have parameters across the whole population. It's the same in programming, except that the variable, if it is an input variable, it's called an argument. So an argument is a variable, but it's a special variable, which is an input variable. In fact, unfortunately, argument can also refer to the value. That's kind of confusing. Wow, programming is confusing. I can see now why some people think programming. So parameter is generic, argument is for the input variable or its value, And then variable, you can have any variable in the function. They're not all input variables. Some are input, some are output, some are intermediate variables that are used inside the function, but they're neither input nor output. They're just internal variables. That would be probably useful to chart out. You can have like variables. Within variables is input, output, intermediate, or local, or internal. Those are all synonyms. Intermediate, local, internal. I think that's pretty much the 3 variables you can have. What are some benefits to using functions in a program? Less lines of code. Absolutely. Brittleness is not a benefit. Brittleness means your app's going to break really easily. It's not a benefit. Disorganization, come on. You're past 5th grade. You know disorganization is not a benefit. At some point, we can go junior, and like teach people who don't know how to code, but we also have to like assume some basic level of education. I guess I'm assuming that, like, I don't need to assume that you know statistics or calculus. I know I've referred to those in this video, but I'm going to have to assume at least like a 5th grade education. It would require some really targeted, it could be done, but it would require some like really targeted, well thought out education to teach programming to someone like before middle school. Yeah, I don't think I'm prepared to do that at this point in time. It probably exists out there though, somewhere. Power to those people. Reusability, flexibility, and organization. Those are all even better than less lines of code. I'm a fan of less lines of code, but it's not the end all be all. Those are awesome. Those are awesome. Reusability is going to result in less lines of code. And it's actually I like this because reusability will result in less lines of code, but the reusability is more important than the fact that there are less lines of code. You can remove lines of code and you can force things to be fewer lines of code. There are ways that you can do that. There are different ways that you can write things. For example, we have a variable name. I think in the last stream, there was some crazy number. And I was like, what if we had a variable name called speed of light? It would make more sense. And that's a good reason that variable names are useful. Why use a variable at all instead of just using the number over and over? Because the variable name can actually communicate information, and it'll help the developer understand what it's for, what its purpose is, how to use it. Oh, that's the speed of light. So I already logically know it'll go in all these certain functions. There's certain things that we do with the speed of light. Speed of light. You could argue it's kind of a long term. What if I just called the variable name A? That would be shorter. It would be less characters of code. And if you have a whole bunch of code and you consolidate them all from 3 words to 1 character, let's say that's 3 words, let's say that's like 10 characters, and you go from 10 to 1. So you're cutting all of your characters that you've typed. Think about like a Microsoft Word document. I typed 10 pages of Microsoft Word, I consolidated it down to 1. Did I reduce the lines of code? Yeah, but it's super confusing now. Because instead of speed of light, I have A. What does A mean? I have no clue. That's actually a real thing that's called minification. Computers can still understand A. They can understand the minified code, but humans can't. So we use minification. We do not use it when we are writing code. We use it after we are done writing the code, and before we send it to the computer, we will apply a minification process. Because if you can have the same amount of information in 1 page, it's actually more efficient, but someone needs to be able to understand it. But computers can still understand it. So we will minify for the computers and we will not minify for the humans. Okay. So what am I showing here? A few things. 1, less lines of code is more efficient. It's actually good for the performance of your software. And it can lend itself to understanding, because just think about like reading something that rambled on and on, like me talking about right now. I'm rambling on and on. It's annoying, and it can actually make it harder to understand than if I was just concise. So conciseness does have a benefit, but it's like It's like a marginal return thing, upside down curve, Goldilocks. We want to be concise, but not too concise. We want to say speed of light, but not A. I don't need to give you the whole physics treatise in my variable name, right? I just want to give you speed of light. It's like a nice Goldilocks point. So being concise is efficient, but it can also be damaging. Reusability, I want to say, is like never damaging. So you get the benefit of lines of code without the problem of being like over the top about it. Flexibility, always great. You can actually be too flexible. That's called over-engineering. But using functions in a program doesn't cause over-engineering. It's just like if the developer is doing their functions wrong, it can cause over-engineering, basically. And organization's always good. And now we're going right to control flow. Imagine that. It's almost like they know control flow matters. Wow, I should actually check Restream because I'm totally ignoring it. I think, let me go to YouTube. I think I'm on the right chat thing in my Restream. Boop. Chat. I think I'm on the. Oh, hi. All right, cool. So my chat is hooked up. That's great. All right, so y'all can like chat me if you're on YouTube, and I'll try to keep an eye out if you're tweeting me. Definitely waiting for Codecademy to tweet back. All right, cool. So let's keep going. How do computers make decisions? Control flow is just like computers, yeah, should know whether or not to skip certain stuff. Nice, this is what we're talking about. If the user's profile is private, hide their posts. Otherwise, make them visible. That's really control flow. And the last one, you can argue it's control flow because it's still, I'm controlling when I click it. But really, it's just a straight shot. Like there's no logical conditions that would cause you to go this way or that. So this is like a really elementary control flow. This is a good one. This is like what I showed you a minute ago when I was saying the alerts on W3 schools. Like I was showing the short circuiting operator, and should it say hey, or should it say whatever the other one was, phase or something like that. Those were conditions where you would step into one block of code or maybe skip it altogether. That's what we're doing here, and that's the real purpose of control flow. It's not a straight shot. You can do that, and you're just controlling time at that point. Like, okay, I step, how long do I wait, then step? But control flow is about more than time. It's about time and also location of code execution. Like the whole scenario of different things that computers can do. I don't want my computer to do everything it can do all the time. I want it to do some things it can do some of the time. Like right now I have my browser up. That's a thing my computer can do. But what if I want to use my statistical application? I have all these apps, right? What if I want to use VS Code? What if I want to use this image snipper thingy? I don't want it to do all these things all the time. I want it to do some of them some of the time. That's what control flow is about. Yeah. Nailed it. Right, you see hide post text is gray because it was never executed. So this could all be one function and you would have part of a step of the function which is not executed. Like, cool. All right, I like it. A structure used to alter the order. Fair. Order of execution. Okay. I'm not sure that's wrong. I think it's structure used to alter. Yeah, I'm not sure that. I think I'm just having a hard time just discerning the difference. All right, fine. I don't think it's a big deal. Yeah, I don't think it's a big deal. So if I'm a learner and I screwed that up and I'm like, I don't understand. I don't think you need to necessarily master these concepts to get started in your GitHub. I think use Codecademy as a tool. If it helps, revisit the lesson, do it again. If you take the lesson over and over and you're still not getting it, we've already proven it could just be Codecademy has some of these questions wrong. In other cases, they're not wrong. It's just they could have confusing wording. At the end of the day, Codecademy should be helping you code. It shouldn't be getting you stuck. I love they have a get unstuck button. I'm kind of nervous to click it because I don't want to. Okay, it's just like a help. Okay, cool. All right, yeah, my tweet where I was like, here, question's wrong, I might want to have submitted. Yeah, so if you're just stuck, don't get frustrated, just move forward. You're gonna be able to get through Codecademy. And the real point is to get to your GitHub. And you're going to learn how to code on your GitHub. You're gonna learn what if blocks do. You're gonna do what while loops do, for loops. If you know how to write a loop, I don't think people are gonna really hold it against you if you say that control flow is a structure that constrain, what did we say? It was like splitting hairs to me, unless I just missed the point. What describes a loop? A control structure? Yeah. That executes a set of instructions if. No, that's not a loop. That's a conditional block. To loop, you have to do it more than once. So if, it's going to execute if. So you're only going to execute once. It's not a loop. A control structure that repeats until, okay, could be. That executes unless, no. Where's the repetition? If you're not repeating, you're not a loop. So those options 1 and 3 are conditional blocks, but they're not loops. Okay. A condition that must be met to execute a conditional statement. That's not a okay. Actually, this is interesting because is an if block a control flow? I think they're asking about control flow in general, but you can talk about specific controls, flow controls. That's not a normal thing to do, though, to talk about an if block as if it's a single control flow. Usually you talk about control flow in general. So they said it's the order of execution in a program. I think that's fair. A structure used to alter the order of execution of the program. Okay, yeah, and so the structure would be like the series of if blocks. Yeah, no, I think they're right. So the series of if blocks would be the flow controls, but it wouldn't be the control flow. right? So we think about it and we can understand that they're right here. I don't think if you're in an interview, if you get flow control and control flows mixed up, I don't think anyone's going to really hold that against you. Yeah, so some of these I would say, let's get through Codecademy, let's learn what we can, and let's get to GitHub ASAP and build something. And once you start building it, you're going to know, hey, it's the if blocks, it's the loops. These are what determine the code that is executed. If we don't know the right term, okay, that's a flow control. If we don't know to call that a flow control, I don't even think it matters. I don't think it matters if you know that if blocks, loops, etc. are called flow controls. I don't think it matters. I think if you can code, you can pick up the vocabulary later. And especially for a junior, that's more than acceptable, I think. Frankly, I think for a lot of mid-rolls, that's fine. Control structures. I think I called these flow controls, control structures. That's great. These are good terminology. I think you can tell, like, I'm not even sure that I'm familiar with all this terminology, although I can pick it up from context. Such as control structures, such as conditionals. We just discussed that control flow are not control structures. We just discussed that. It has to be conditional. Conditionals, those are like the if-else blocks. And loops. Loops are not conditional. Yeah. Yeah, loops can also be loop. You conditionally loop. Okay, great. This describes an exception control structure. Repeatedly until maybe set of instructions repeated if an error occurs during its execution. Set of instructions is repeated if an error. Yeah, maybe. So in VBA we have like go to catch, like try catch. I think that's what they mean. Exception code. A set of instructions is executed if an exception occurs, like if an error occurs. That set's execution is stopped in a second step of instructions is executed. I think any of these could be the answer. So I think this is a case of they probably gave you the answer during the lesson. I think technically any of these could be true. I think probably it's this third one, because what I'm thinking about here is a try-catch. And in a try-catch, you don't loop. There are cases where you loop on exception. Like, and VBA will go to an error handler, and sometimes the error handler will feed right back into loop. That happens sometimes. In other words, you basically swallow or ignore the exception. I have a hard time imagining Codecademy would be teaching that, because that's usually considered an unusual, rare thing, or even a bad practice, that if you swallow or ignore an exception. Yeah. This is definitely the most common, and that would be a try-catch pattern. And then the first one is not really, so these two are talking about an exception in terms of an error, which is a common programming term. An exception is an error, but logically and mathematically, an exception doesn't need to be an error. It can just be an exception to some rule, like while not true, right? Or like while repeated until an exception occurs. That is until that while condition is no longer met. Or a break pattern. You have a loop with a break pattern. These would be logical exceptions or mathematical exceptions in a loop. They would not be exceptions in the sense of errors. So exception control structure, they're talking about an error handling pattern, which is the typical way. That's typically what we mean in programming. I think as a learner, it might be confusing to get used to this word exception, meaning error, because in pure logic and in pure math, exceptions aren't errors. They're just unique conditions. So you could confuse this with a conditional control structure. Again, if you're getting hung up on the language, I would say move on and get to programming, because you are going to learn, hey, I need to try catch in this situation, and this is what a try catch block does. And if you don't know that that is called an exception control structure, I don't think anyone cares. Like for me, the term error handling pattern is more familiar than exception control structure. I think it's going to be good if you're able to pick up on what an interviewer is saying. You need to know enough that you can at least gain it or glean it from context. But you don't need to memorize all these terms and like stress out about, oh, was it exception or error, condition, exception? If you know the difference between an if block and a try catch, you're going to know that very quickly. And if you accidentally refer to an if block as an exception, I don't think an interviewer is going to hold it against you if you're like, I'm talking about an exception to a rule. I'm not talking about an error. That's another reason to, there's like the interview advice. I don't know where I read this, but basically just like have a conversation with your interviewer and make sure that they understand what you're trying to say. That you're talking about an exception to a rule, not an exception in the sense of a programming. And I think they will be very happy to go along with that. I think I've wasted a lot of time going down rabbit trails. No, it let me go right through it. Okay, it's asked me to do something specific and it let me right through it. That's bad news. So I was working with someone on a different lesson. I think this might be just the Learn to Code lesson specifically. There's such a lack of validation on these steps, because in the HTML lesson, I'm going to do something I'm probably not supposed to. I'm going to go right over to Learn HTML just to validate what I was going to say, because I thought when I did the HTML lesson, it like actually checked if I did it correctly. Yeah, you see, it has these checkboxes, instructions, and then there's like a gray box. So over here, instructions, no gray box. I think this is unique to the Learn How to Code course. It basically lets you skip through everything. But here, I can't click next. Okay. You see, I had to do it, I ran it, it checked if it worked, and then it gives me a checkbox, and now I can click next. That's skipping ahead. That's the Learn HTML lesson. I'll close that. I return here to Learn How to Code. The only thing I'm pointing out is that I'm a little bit nervous that I can skip ahead and I can do a bunch of stuff wrong and it still lets me proceed and it doesn't validate or tell me that I did it wrong. I continue to emphasize for learners this Learn How to Code course. Let's fly through it, right? And let's not get hung up. Everything that we're learning right here, lists, variables. We're going to do this all again when we try to learn JavaScript. And let me check this too, but I think learning JavaScript, it will actually validate. Move to the next exercise when you're ready, fine. Right, okay, use console log and it actually makes you. So we're gonna go through all of this stuff again with JavaScript and probably like many, many times. And it's the repetition is what really teaches. I don't think the foundational course, memorizing everything in the foundational course is what teaches you how to code. What teaches you how to code is repetition, repetition. Okay, so with that said, let's go ahead and I guess do whatever it asks us here, even though it's not going to tell us if we did it right. Shout out to Codecademy people. I just wonder if it's a little bit dangerous because the people are trying to do stuff and they're just getting confused. Did I do it right? I don't know. And it lets you go through. Does that mean that you did it right? No. You could be doing everything wrong. So we're really relying on the quizzes, I guess. Yeah, maybe that's fine. Really relying on the quizzes. But even the quizzes we've seen, like, take it with a grain of salt because some of the questions can be wrong or ambiguous. Yeah, I think learn how to code. My kind of feeling with this whole course is just take the whole course with a grain of salt. It's very, there's some stuff wrong with it. There's some stuff wrong with it. It gives you a lot of information, and if it helps you, that's awesome. And if it doesn't help you, don't sweat it at all. Move right on into the web path. That's my advice. You can see I'm doing a lot of keyboard hotkeys. You'll learn this stuff as you code, but basically up arrow, down arrow, end, shift home, and then control X, and then go up and control V. You don't have to know any of those, but you're going to want to learn them. It'll make you faster. Let's go back and actually. This is not exactly what they asked us to do. Let's see. Sorry, this list is not correct. Oh, it actually validates it over there. All right, cool. Here's the trail, starts the hike. He's halfway. I had one person that I was working with that was like typing all these out, and it's like, it's taking a lot of time. Also, you notice between the first and second entries, I did not put a space. Then I did. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because the string is within the quotes. So the white space that is outside of the quotes will be ignored. I can do a bunch of line breaks over there. See, it still works because it's the program is ignoring all of the white space, which is to say spaces, line breaks. So the program is actually going to ignore all that and see it with no spaces every time. So it's more like what is helping me, the developer, to see. So sometimes I'll just do like a new line every time. Might make it easier to read. Whatever makes it easier for you and your team. This R data structure, they're important in programming because they are ordered and sequential. Yeah, I'm not going to click it because I want to read the other answers, but the whole point of a list is that they are ordered. If you don't care about the order or sequential nature of your information, like 1, 2, 3, those are numbers. Those numbers need to go in order, or you ruin math, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? The numbering system exists with an order. Other things, I don't really care about the order. My cat has 4 legs and 2 ears. Do I care if I say 4 legs before 2 ears, or can I say 2 ears first? It doesn't matter. Really, essentially, it's all at the same time. So that would be, I don't care about the order. So that could be, we would use an object data structure. that case, if we don't care about the order. So there's a different structure if I don't care about the order. If I'm using a list, I'm declaring that I do care about the order. Second, they are unordered and random. They shouldn't be. Now, this can be confusing for a couple of reasons. First of all, there is such a thing as an unordered list, but that is an HTML concept. It is not a JavaScript concept. And I'm just telling you this again because it seems to me, and I could be wrong here, that Codecademy in this introductory lesson is sneaking in JavaScript ideas. Can only contain one item, that's nonsense. One other item about an unordered random list. This is advanced, refer to it later, whatever, but it's just a call out that shows us why the second one is something to be a little bit more worried about than you might think at first. At first you might go, unordered and random. Lists are always ordered and non-random. Well, that's not quite true. First of all, we have the unordered list I described. Second of all, in an API, if the response includes a list, that those list items may or may not be guaranteed to return in the correct order, depending on how they are computed. So this, when I was working at SAIC, we would get a response from the Java server, and Java has several list types. And the order of objects in that list, it might not be sorted, depending on how the Java backend obtained the list of data. Let's say that they're talking about a list of users, okay? What does it even mean to order the list of users? Are you ordering them by age? Are you ordering them by how tall they are, how much they weigh, how intelligent they are? How are you ordering these people? When they signed up? So they might query the database and just get those users in the most expedient manner. And the most expedient manner may not include a logical sorting. So that's a reason to think that, yeah, sometimes lists are unordered, or at least and random, or at least they are sorted in a way that you're not aware of. But if they're sorted in a way that you're not aware of, that's equivalent to being random. What does random even mean? It means with no discernible pattern. So that's another reason to think that lists can be unordered and random. However, when the list is shipped from the backend, they were the list of users, hypothetically, a list of users taken out of the database in the most expedient manner from the point of view of from the database. Now that I actually have the code in my JavaScript, I'm on the website. Once I obtain that list, I'm going to mark it with my own ordering. And it's ordered from there on out. Even if the order doesn't make sense, there is an order. I think that's the Achilles heel for this middle one. They are always ordered, even if the order doesn't make sense, they are still ordered. So even if the users are sorted randomly, they are still in a particular order in that list. So they are ordered in sequential, even if the ordering may not make sense. Cool. If some planets equal Venus, then add code to my planet Earth. Oh, I gotta read that twice. Okay, there's a list with an index of 0. That means that Venus is the first entry, okay? Add code to set my planet Earth. Okay, my planet equals, okay, I just want it to be Earth, okay. Oh gosh. I think the question here in English is more, and this is not the fault of Codecademy. I think they did as well as they could, but sometimes just reading code actually makes more sense than reading code embedded in a sentence. So they want it to be Earth. So it's 0. Remember, we're 0 index. By the way, not all programming languages are 0 index. So again, this is JavaScript sneaking in. I think you could argue this is also Python. Okay, fine. But we had the dictionary problem, if you recall. I don't know. Maybe that was agreed with Python also. Does Python have integer and number? Yeah, it looks like Python has floats. There are 4 distinct numeric types: plain integers, long integers, floating, and complex. This is Python 2.4. I'm not a Python expert, and modern Python is Python 3, but it looks like number. So there was a question earlier in the stream in this video where it was talking about dictionaries and numbers and integers. And number is a JavaScript thing. It doesn't look like number is a Python thing. Which would indicate again that this introductory lesson is targeted at JavaScript. In, float, long, complex. Like those are all different number types, but there's no generic number. Okay, so I think this is all JavaScript. I don't know why they don't just put like const or let and like make it official. Maybe they have some like plan that in the future they are going to make it more generic, but I'm actually really opposed. I think it's confusing a new learner to try and give them this generic programming idea that goes across languages. I think it's super confusing. I think you start with one, master it, and then you can learn others and learn the differences and similarities. I think that's the right way to go about it. So I would just call it JavaScript and dive right in. Anyway, so it's 0, 1, 2, 3. It's 3. The answer is 3. Here's 3, and then my planet, right? It's index of some planets. Which of the following examples resembles a list? Well, we don't have lists in JavaScript. We have arrays. So this is something confusing. A list in Python, a list in Java, these are different. Would you even use a list in Java? Typically, like, I personally don't use pure lists almost ever. In Java. Chapters in a book, because they are sequential in order, and flat, linear, no branching. What would be the value of my subject? 1, 0, 1, biology. 0 index. Very cool. Loops, 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 loops. Create a pattern without loops. Alright, place a pink tile. Create a pattern without loops. Okay. I need to do this 10 times. Yay! Love it. You can see how much it did reduce my lines. It was reusable. It also reduced my ability to commit an error. And if I did commit an error, it normalized the error so that I did it consistently instead of seemingly randomly or in a hard to read way. If I, screwed that up once, now I have only one place I need to go and fix it instead of 10, 20, 100 places I have to go. Gosh. Loops are great. These are all just different kinds of loops. Put it all together, okay. Copy, okay, this is a while loop. This is not a for loop. Copy the for loop text. Oh, okay, this is the for. Okay, copy the for loop text to the editor. Run it. Done. Cool. Stuff looks cool over here. I love it. Delete the for loop and copy the while loop. And now they're using let. You see that let? I just snuck it in there. You weren't even looking. But now it's officially JavaScript. These syntax, for loop and while loop, 100% JavaScript. And I have no problem with the JavaScript focus. I love it. If anything, I just wish that they would come out earlier and tell you, hey, we're going to take a JavaScript approach to this whole thing. And it actually makes me wonder why you're taking the Learn How to Code at all lesson, because there's a JavaScript lesson. And in that JavaScript lesson, they are like, hey, we're doing JavaScript, right? Scratching my foot, sorry. I have an itchy foot. Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm not a learner at this point. I'm like a old dude. I mean, I'm 30, so I'm not an old dude, but I've been coding for a while. And from my point of view, maybe it's the wrong point of view, but from my point of view, I would rather you tell them, we are going to teach you JavaScript. And when you get good at that, feel free to branch out into other languages. I'd rather tell the learner that than we are going to teach you programming in this general agnostic way. And then once you master that, then we'll teach you JavaScript. And then you can learn another language. First of all, it just seems like an extra step of indirection, just a bigger waste of time, and it's taking me longer to get to the finish line. But probably more important than those points, I think it's just confusing. How do you have the syntax for a function if you're not declaring the language? Because the syntax for a function varies by language. The syntax for declaring a variable varies by language. The syntax for looping variables by language. Syntax varies by language. So how would someone respond to me? They would say, well, we're interested in the concepts, not the syntax. I think it is nearly impossible to nail the concepts first. I think you need to nail the syntax first, because I think it's the repetition and the experimentation that drives home the concept. And I think repetition and experimentation has to be associated with a concrete syntax. It doesn't have to be JavaScript, but it has to be a concrete syntax, because I need to give them this code, like this code in front of me. And they need to be able to experiment by changing the 10 to a 9 and changing the 0 to a 3 and changing orange to green. And they have to hit the run button and see that it does something different. And then changing green to maroon, because I just want to know if it'll work. No, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. That's why JavaScript. No, just kidding. Maroon was not an option. Say gray. Are they doing British gray or not? Okay, let's try gray with an E. Doesn't make any sense. How about pink? I know we can get pink and blue. Now we're talking. And you see, now I got the concept. What if I switch let to const? And it should still work, but I don't know if a learner would care about that. Oh, I wasn't allowing it to tick up. That was smart. It's just fun, right? Their little games there are fun. I can play around with it and I can learn. But what am I learning? Am I learning the concept? In part. Am I learning the syntax? In part. So let's not let it be a throwaway syntax that you're learning some agnostic syntax that's like a weird hybrid of various languages. Let me learn the syntax and the concept together, and let's just tell you what that syntax is. This is JavaScript. You're learning JavaScript. You're getting good at it. And you're learning the syntax and the concept. And once you get good at it, we can switch to another language that will have the same concepts implemented with a different syntax. So then the learner can go, oh, the syntax is changing, but here's what they really mean by a loop. It's this abstract concept that can be implemented in these different ways. Just some thoughts. Step loop is used in the program rush up and down for each or count. Yep. Oh, is it a for each? For each, yeah. That's right, because the number of teeth in your mouth might change. So the collection reference doesn't change. It's just however, I don't care how many teeth are in your mouth, for each teeth in your mouth. So I'm not saying, oh, you have 13 teeth, then 13 times. No, because you might lose a tooth and I would still say 13 times and the 13 times would be wrong. Definite overthinking going on here. Anyway, I love it. If each call to place tile places one tile, how many tiles would be placed by this program? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 3 times. See, this is not JavaScript. Oh. 4 3 times. That Python, you do 4 3 times in Python. Yeah, I don't even know if this is a language. I think this is like an abstract pseudocode, like language agnostic concept teaching. I'm not a fan of. I'm not a fan of this. Give me a JavaScript loop or a Python loop. Give me one language and stick with that language. Okay, in programming, each execution of a loop is called A of n. Execution of a loop is called A of n. Oh, it's called n. It's called n iteration. A or n. It's not. Okay. Sweet. Select the most accurate statement about loops. Loops are not useful. Fake news. An iteration is made of multiple loops. Also fake news. Loops are only useful when the number of repetitions is known. Super fake. By process of elimination, the fourth answer is correct, but let's read it. Loops require less coding and are easier to read than repeated lines of code. Amen. Love it. That's absolutely right. What type of loop is in this program? While there are slices of pizza left, eat a slice of pizza. I love that. Good on Codecademy. They're doing a great job. Because you're interested in web development. Hey, what the hell? How did you know that? Ew. They have like a Siri integration. They're getting information from my iPhone. How did you know that? How did you know that? Okay, anyway, it's true, I do, and I recommend everyone go web development. But I'm really curious how this thing knew. Bruh, I'm so mind blown. By the way, I'm done with the course. How long have I been online? Check my YouTube. It looks like about 2 hours, inclusive of rabbit trails. And then it was like 10 minutes last time, so 3, 4. I'll even go 4 hours, but not the 6 that they estimate. It's taking you all 6 hours. That's bad. So I'm gonna go learn to code. And I'm 100% done with the path now, right? Learn to code, 100% done. Okay. In a second, I'm gonna sign out and see if someone who is not signed in can verify on my profile what I've done. And do that in a second. First, I'm going to go back to the learn to code. And did I just like make a selection at some time without thinking about it? Learn how to code. This is a language agnostic course and does not teach a specific programming language, only fundamental programming concepts. If you are looking for your programming language, try Python. I hate everything about that sentence. I love Codecademy, but I don't like language agnostic courses that try to teach concepts without teaching syntax. And why would Python be my first language? It's not even awesome. JavaScript should be your first language. Prerequisites none, that's great. With basics of programming, I think I already took my profile. Basics of programming 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I took these 3. Where did I tell you that I was into web development? I don't think I did. I think Codecademy, for anyone, if they complete learn how to code, I think it always ships them to web development, which makes me ask, if anyone who likes to code, you're going to ship them to web development, why are you telling them try Python? That's not a web development language. I'm pretty confused right now, but more from a pedagogical standpoint than from a learner standpoint. I think if I was a learner, I'd just be like, okay, doop, doop, web development, whoop, and I'd end up in the right place probably. So learn how to code was part of the Code Foundations path, is that right? Oh, they have Vue.js now, that's cool. Okay, so I go to this path, right? And you have to be pro to get the intro, and also it doesn't matter. Learn how to code. I find this really confusing from a pedagogical standpoint because I'm going to complete learn to code and it's going to tell me to proceed to web development. So what, I just skip this computer science thing? Where does it even ask me which one I'm interested in? That's confusing. Well, anyway, I'm personally not too upset because I do recommend everyone start with web development. And I think I said a lot of people can frankly skip this step. It's so basic. And it's not a huge investment of time. It's like 3 or 4 hours. So yeah, knock it out. If you're confused, don't be surprised, and it also doesn't matter because you're barely getting started. You're going to have plenty of time to build on that. Then we'll go web development. You don't need all this stuff to get started in web development. Cool, I think that's it for today. That's it for today. Yeah, and I think next time we stream, we'll dive into the web development path. Learn to code. I recommend the course, although I think it has many flaws. I don't think it'll take you 6 hours. I think it'll take you hopefully less than 4 hours. If it takes you more than 4 hours, I don't know, talk to your mentor, but that might be fine. I guess some people are going to be slower learners. That's fine. I don't think you should learn Python to start with. But yeah, you do learn some good concepts. I think when you transition over to web development and dive into HTML, you're going to be a little confused because HTML doesn't make use of many of those concepts, and also CSS doesn't. But that's totally fine because control flow, variables, functions, things like that are the heart of what we're talking about with programming. So I'm glad that you get a taste of that up front. And then you're going to take these 2 lessons and you're probably going to be like, what about all that programming? You'll get back into it with this 3rd one. And it's just going to take a few courses to kind of put it all together. Right around here, I'll go through this with y'all, but I think right around here is where I would go over to GitHub and start using GitHub. Actually, it might be useful to knock these guys out too. So we'll see. Thanks for tuning in, and hope you'll join me next time when I actually get into web development. See you later.